work that we would want to do and the work that we are going to do. Let me first take this opportunity to welcome some of my Safsi colleagues who are on this call. We have Chloe, who will be helping us with all the technicals, and would also have Numisa, who would also be helping with communication as well as the technicals. We will have some of the colleagues that I have not seen on now, but heading this will be Wayne, who is our programs and operations manager, will also be on this call. And participating online will be our executive director, who will not be present on this call, but who has also contributed or will be making a contribution in terms of the presentation on this call as well. I would like to welcome you all to this follow-up meeting, which resulted from our meeting in August. Thank you very much all for coming. To start us off, I would like to ask God knows to open this meeting with a prayer. God knows, Sigogo, may you please open this meeting with a prayer.
Okay, thank you. Let us bow our heads and pray. Dear Lord, thank you once again for allowing us to meet today. We want to thank you for the good day. We ask you to lead our day as we will learn throughout the workshop. May you please guide us in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, God knows.
Amen.
And would want to thank God knows for that prayer. And with that, we would now want to ask Flo to help us with the message that is coming from the Executive Director of the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute, that is SAFCEI, and her name is Francesca De Gasparis. She will be the one who will be giving us the opening remarks. Flo, may you please assist us with that? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Francesca De Gasparis. I'm the Executive Director of SAFCEI, the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute. Welcome to the 6-week workshop that my colleague Gabriel will be hosting with you. I'm so sorry I can't be with you today, but Gabriel asked me to send a few opening remarks on why SAFCEI works on food and climate justice issues. I've been at SAFCEI since the beginning of 2017. And at that time, we were looking more at energy justice. We had a big campaign in South Africa on nuclear energy. Some of you will know us from that campaign when the nuclear energy deals were declared illegal and unconstitutional. And SAFCEI also has been working on climate change and environmental issues with faith leaders since it began in 2005. However, what we were hearing and what we were really listening to faith leaders was this real concern about food security, about access to nutritional food, about access to healthy food that's affordable for families, and that there'd been a big erosion in laws and policies due to some of the initiatives that were running across Africa, not so much in South Africa itself, but elsewhere in the region through AGRA, an organization that I know many of you have followed and been concerned about, and you signed the open letter to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation saying that we don't want industrial farming in Africa. We don't need industrial farming in Africa. And this was a very important moment for faith leaders, standing up and raising your voices to say, industrial food systems are not required for us to feed and to nourish our communities. Faith leaders are often seen as not necessarily being the experts in this area, but indeed you are witnesses of your communities. You see those most vulnerable when they're struggling to feed their families. You see the impacts of climate change, of environmental degradation, the droughts, the floods. And you know how serious an issue this is for smallholder farmers across our region and the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. So food and climate justice became formally a program when we did our next strategic planning session at SAFCEI after I started, because it's an absolutely critical need of faith communities in Africa. And faith leaders have a very important role to play. You all have a very important role to play, whether it's around reconnecting us in our faith communities to traditional farming practices, to agroecology, ways of farming that is more connected with nature, more in keeping with the teachings of our faiths, more in keeping with the nutritional needs of our communities, and to create access to affordable food. Or whether you are here because you're wanting to learn how to do a food garden yourself, or perhaps you want to join SAFCEI in our important advocacy work, find out more about what else we're doing since the open letter to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and find out other ways that you can get involved in advocacy in your country. As you know, SAFCEI is a regional entity. We are very committed to supporting faith leaders and faith communities across the region. While we're based here in Cape Town, and Gabriel's coming with us today from Zimbabwe, our faith leaders are right across the region. As many of you, I'm sure, are from a range of countries here today. And we're so thrilled that you could be with us today. And I'm sorry, I'm not there in person, but I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting series of workshops. John Nzira is incredibly knowledgeable and will really impart more of his knowledge like he did last year with us. So we're absolutely thrilled to have him back again. And I'm looking forward to joining the workshop later in the series and coming and hearing from you how you're finding it, what are the challenges that you're seeing. Of course, our food systems and food is really part of our faith. It's a sacred part of our relationship with the earth. What we eat is indeed who we are and becomes the constituencies of our bodies and our health and our well-being. And it's also a reflection on our culture and our other practices, the love language in families. You know, we have our favorite dishes and we have our favorite meals that we cook for each other at those special occasions or even just every day. So food is such a central issue to all of our lives and such a personal issue. I'm sure if we did some dish sharing, we would be able to sample some fantastic range of talents and skills and foods and different ways of cooking delicious meals. And I hope one of these days when COVID is less prevalent, we'll be able to meet in person and do some of that sharing of food too. But in the meanwhile, we're going to be online for the next 6 weeks, and there's going to be lots of very interesting discussions going on. As I said, SAFCEI works both in the practical support of faith communities to help you create food gardens in your faith institutions, which often have land and access to important resources, so that those poorer in your community can learn about or relearn or feel that their traditional practices are indeed super valued and so important. And also get involved more in our campaign work. A lot of this is happening online, so it doesn't matter if you're remote, you can still join us. Have a look at our open letter. If you haven't had a chance to sign it yet, it's still open for faith leaders and people of faith who are leaders in their communities to sign up. You don't have to be an institutional head. We would very welcome your addition to that open letter to the Gates Foundation. We continue to campaign in that area, and I'm sure Gabriel will be telling you more about how that campaign is progressing. So all that's left for me to say is sorry again that I can't be there. I hope you have a really wonderful first session, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the plans and ideas and ways we can move forward together on food and climate justice, bearing in mind that our food systems give us resilience in terms of the impacts of climate change. It is one of the ways that we will create ways to be buffered, ways to survive, ways to thrive, ways to continue despite the changing climate, despite the environmental degradation, and despite poor government policy. There are things we can do. So we look forward to exploring that with you and the series of workshops coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Flo, for sharing that video from Francesca, welcoming all of us, and also outlining the reasons why as SAFCEI we have engaged on the issues of our sustainable consumption, and specifically focusing on the issues that surround food security, which we believe is one of the key issues for all of us. And also it has been noted through the United Nations that when we are producing food, it actually contributes to 47% of the greenhouse gases that have been released into the air, particularly when industrial food production is in use. So this is our aim, to actually try and reduce the impact of agriculture on climate by introducing sustainable consumption, by introducing sustainable production, and hence in this particular training that we have today. Before we proceed, I would like to ask us to go through just a quick poll, which Flo will help us with. May we all please participate in this poll and give our answers so that we would also have the information that is coming from there. Flo, may we go on to poll number 1? Thank you.
Hi, Gabriel. I'm just going to ask if a co-host of mine can launch the poll. On my side, I cannot. Ngumisa or Barry, can you check if you can launch a poll from your side as co-host?
The poll is launched.
Thank you. May we please all just complete the first poll? Whilst we are completing that poll, I just want to say all of us who are on this call, we are being called to actually bring about practical results to the work that we are going to be sharing with you. Would like all of you to participate to help your communities to actually set up the gardens or go into production. And for all of you also to be involved in the production, because as part of this series, we will also come to a point where we will look at monitoring, and each one of us will be involved in the monitoring of the projects that will be involved in. So therefore, we would want you to pay particular attention to all the work that we're going to be doing, and also try to follow the different stages that I'm going to be shared with you, and have at least a piece of land or a piece of garden that is ready for you to go out and practice and actually do the work. But on the other hand, also having learned of some of the ways in which we can produce food in a sustainable way, we can also use this information, as was also said by Francesca in her opening remarks, to actually lobby our political leaders or those who will make the policies to be cognizant of the fact that we are making a contribution to climate change when we are supporting industrial farming. And therefore, we should have policies and laws that support the environment through sustainable production, which we will be learning throughout this series, and also the ones that we are going to be practicing in our different areas, maybe at our faith institutions, at home, or in our communities. Thank you very much, everyone. I would now like to check, Misa, are we done with the poll?
Yes, we've only received 44 responses out of 56, Gabriel, which is 78% of the responses. I see there's people who are struggling to see the poll, but it should pop up in your screen. But we've ended it now. You can respond to the question on the chat box. The question is, what is your gender? I'll share the results, everyone.
Thank you very much, Numisa. Meaning on this call at the moment, we have 43% of the participants are women and 57 are male. If it is possible, Numisa, we can actually go to our poll number 2 as well quickly, which we should also answer quickly as well before we get on underway with our workshop. If we can pop in the poll number 2 as well.
All right, thank you, Gabriel. Just to note everyone, the poll will pop up in your screen. Just click on your response. All right, I will end the poll right now. We are still getting just a few responses left.
Okay.
If you can't see the poll, please respond on the chat box. The question is, may you please indicate your age group? There's between 18 and 35 years of age, 36 to 50 years of age, and 51 and above. If you're unable to respond to the poll, please respond in the chat box. All right, I'll share the results now, Gabriel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Numisa. From our poll results, I'm glad to note that we have 51% of the participants in this call who are what we would term the youth. And it is heartening to note that we have so many youth that are interested on issues of sustainable production. You are part of the future, therefore it is important also for you to participate. So thank you very much for the youth that are on this call. We have 34% who are between 36 and 50 and 15% 51 and above. Thank you, everyone. And we would now like to move on to the next part of our workshop, which is the presentation that we are going to get from our facilitator for this series, or one of our facilitators for this series. And our facilitator is an expert on issues of agroecology. He has done a lot of workshops and has trained people in Southern Africa. He's based in South Africa under Ukuvuna, and his name is John Nzira. And we are now going to hand over to John Nzira, and we will have the presentation coming from John. And afterwards, please take note where you may have questions. Let's just make use of the chat box. And for those who may actually want to ask the questions, we may have some time later on after his presentation so that you may get the answers directly from him. But it is good for us to also have the questions in the chat box so that we'll keep a record, and then you'll also be able to prepare the answers even before the end of the presentation. So thank you very much. Can we then move on to the presentation from John?
Yeah, good afternoon. Today we are going to talk about the current consumption and the food systems, and especially the impact of industrial agriculture and the new approaches that we can use for improving this. And firstly, I would like to thank SAFCEI for bringing me here for this program. And yeah, I would like to share some experience and also some a little bit of what.
Would like to apologize to everyone. There was a bit of a technical error. We'll try screen share again in a moment.
Yeah, good afternoon. Today we are going to talk about the current consumption and the food systems, and especially the impact of industrial agriculture and the new approaches that we can use for improving this. And firstly, I would like to thank SAFCEI for bringing me here for this program. And yeah, I would like to share some experience and also some a little bit of what is happening globally and what is happening locally in terms of good food consumption and where can we go out of after this. Basically, I'd like to start by looking at the industrial situation where we know all that we have industrial agriculture, and industrial agriculture came especially after the First and Second World War. And when this industrial agriculture came, it came as a tool to address the food shortage in the world, and especially in Africa in the 1960s. It came as a revolution to provide for Africa to provide its own food. But let's see what is happening now. The situation we are having now, it's like Africa or South Africa, we are not able to feed ourselves. Despite that, we have quite a huge pieces of land that are bare, that are open. And despite that, there is a lot of agricultural activities that is taking place. But we found that we import most of the food from other countries or other continents. So we are looking at why is it happening that way? Maybe the approach that we have, like this machineries and the inputs, agricultural inputs that we use, is it really addressing the need of the community and the need of the environment? Sometimes we found lots of challenges. For example, you find that we use heavy machinery that depends on external inputs and is driven by the oil, and oil is not renewable. Oil is or fuel, it's non-renewable. So what happens when the mines or the oil deposits are empty? It means we will struggle to feed ourselves. We will struggle to feed ourselves a lot. And looking at the population that is increasing as well, what's going to happen with the same agricultural industry that is not able to sustain ourselves? Population is going to go in 2020, 2050, maybe it's going to be at 10 billion. How are we going to feed ourselves? Currently, we can see that the industrial agriculture approach, it is causing soil erosion. We find that a lot of soil is running away from our farms or our residential areas into the ocean. And as it goes there to the ocean, the soil, it also it also goes there with water. So at the end of the day, we have the challenges of enough water underground, and topsoil that is rich that we can use to grow crops, it also goes away to the ocean. This approach also, it's exacerbating the issue of desertification, because as you cut down trees for cultivation, there is a very minimum approaches of minimum practices of planting as much trees that are cut, that are removed. We are not bringing them back on the environment. We are not planting them back. So it becomes a challenge as well. That desertification, it's actually increasing. And as we have desertification, farmers or rural communities, small scale or commercial, they tend to leave the land because it's no longer giving them food. So, and the land itself, its inability to cultivate and provide the right food that we need. That's why, as this exacerbates, we found that siltation happens in the rivers, and big pools or pools in the rivers are closed. And you find this river sand or siltation in the rivers. Where is it coming from? It's coming from our agricultural activities. It's coming from our homesteads. It's coming from the way we manage livestock on land. So all the systems that we are using now, most of the systems that we are using now, they are clearly indicating that there is a pressure on the environment, and the environment cannot be able now to take care of us because we are not taking care of it. So it is really a challenge that as the communities, as provincial groups or nation or continent, we need to look at this, that there is a lot of negative impact on the environment. This negative impact on the environment, it also exacerbates or affects the social situation in our communities, where there is a lot of injustice of food accessibility, injustice of even water, accessibility of water. And when we have this, we found on the other end, we have lots of people who are suffering, who are struggling. And whilst the others are enjoying the food, but they eat a lot, and see waste is discovered that there's a lot of waste that comes in our communities. This waste is also dumped into the dumping sites and making the dumping sites getting full so fast. So despite that there is climate change, we are challenged with how should we now address the issue of water crisis, the food crisis. Most communities, they do not have water. They do not have enough food. And when they do not have water, what do they do when they receive rain? They leave also the water running to the river, to the ocean. There is lack of management of rain that is received within our communities or within the farms. Hence, it affects the environmental angle of our situation in a particular country or in a continent. The food we have, as I say, we have the people who do have there is hunger in communities, and there is malnutrition within children because they are eating only maybe one type of food. They are not eating diversity. Then how should we address this, and where is the problem? What is the root cause? Probably we need to look at, if we say the root cause, it's how we are distributing or sharing or allowing other people to have access to food. So there is injustice. As I said, there is injustice of how we can have access to water, access to food. You'll find that there's a dam in a community, but the dam is not supplying water to these communities closer by. The water is going to the commercial farmer, who is actually cultivating monoculture system. So it's a big challenge in that sense as well. We found that the food, sometimes when it comes to the communities, there is a lot of, like within this COVID situation, and when in South Africa there was some riots, you will find that food government was trying to provide money and food to the community. But as the resources go into some hands of other people, you find there is corruption that goes through with them. And that's a great injustice for the people who are suffering on the ground. So we need to look at the policy of the country. How do they support the local people who are suffering? How do they distribute land to make sure that everyone has access to land, access to water, and access to grow own food, or to access to grow enough food for themselves as families? So these challenges, they are now leading us to think of how can we go back to the roots. Going back to the roots, it's to look at consideration or alternatives of how we can improve our situation, both social challenges and environmental challenges. So within the approaches, we consider that we may need to look at approaches like permaculture, approaches like agroecology, regenerative system, polyculture systems, organic farming. Why we are bringing these approaches to the community or to the way of farming is because they are including the production of food in harmony with nature. So if they are giving us production of food, access to production of food in harmony with nature, why not apply it in our farms, wherever we practice, wherever we do land use management? Why can't we try these systems? Because they can provide abundance or a wide variety of food, whilst at the same time taking care of the environment. So when we look at these systems like permaculture, it allows us to understand nature and bring the right species in a farm or in a community. And when we have this, it's trying to address the nutritional requirements, the needs of the community by bringing diverse of species in the community or in the farm. And when we have these diverse species on the farm, it is also addressing the soil challenges or the water challenges, because with the soil, where there are trees, there is minimum erosion. And where there are trees, water infiltrates direct into the soil, and then it supports the water tables. Whilst looking on agroecology, we say nature itself can give us a good education or a good knowledge that we can apply whilst taking care of the environment. So the situation of saying we need to cover the ground, to have ground cover like mulch or any form of ground cover, it can be live ground cover like green manure cover crops. All those systems we are copying from nature. That's the agroecological approach, where we say in nature, trees, lots of trees clustered together, they drop leaves, and the leaves, they cover the ground. When we receive rain, the water is directed into the ground, support the underground water table. And whilst the regenerative system is looking at how do we restore nature, how do you restore the future, our future, the future of the species, plants, and animals, the future of their people, the future of how we can continuously produce food, enough food for the family, enough food for the nation. And if we apply these systems in a proper way, then we won't have challenges of hunger and malnutrition. And we have applied some of these technologies in Africa, in the SADC region, and they have proved to be effective a lot in our situation, in our communities. We are also faced, for example, with urbanization, where people, they come into urban areas, and when they are in there, they don't have enough piece of land to cultivate. How can they cultivate? How they can produce food? So the system of permaculture agroecology can give them a way or chance of growing what they need in a balcony, backyard, rooftops. All these approaches can help to provide food closer to the people. And these approaches are fundamentals that they are approaches that give such opportunity to take care of the environment. There are approaches that gives us opportunity to take care of our people, because these approaches, they do not use synthetic chemicals in the farming practice. They make sure that what we are doing, we are in harmony with nature. And that gives us a way of providing all what we need in the same environment without causing much harm to the environment, without pollution. Because you know, the industrial agriculture, it has a lot of pollution that can cause the water tables to be polluted or kill some plants or some animals in the rivers. For example, when you use chemicals, where do they go? They are trapped during the rain time, and they leach into the soil, or they are eroded to the rivers, and there are aquatic life there, and then they can be killed. The aquatic life can be killed by the chemicals that we use in the farming area. These approaches we are talking about, they are approaches that do not use synthetic chemicals. Hence, then you live in harmony with nature, and also can help in eradicating diseases and the other challenges that can affect people. So as we talk about these challenges, we can use the simple application, simple approaches of looking at what are the qualities that we want to see on the environment. The qualities that we want to see on the environment, they are determined by what goals do you have on the landscape. And the goals on the landscape, are you looking to see in the next 5 years a food forest? And how can you create that food forest? The idea is to bring wide variety of species on the landscape. And the species at the end, the diversity of the species, they provide diverse nutrient source for the family. So having monoculture, for example, on the environment cannot address the nutritional need of the family, nutritional need of even the environment itself, because it has to feed itself, nature has to feed itself. We can look at the quality of life that we want to see now and beyond. What quality of life do you want to see? Are you looking to have a situation where you eat health? And when you eat health, you are not wasteful. You get what you need at a particular time. So how do you go about? Is to make sure that you have the right food at the right time. And how do you do it? Is to look at how can you grow the food in an organic way, in a permaculture way, in an agroecological way, regenerative system, the conservation agriculture approach, so that the food that you need is provided on specific time or specific time of the year. And when we have this food, it is grown in a natural way. There is not much distraction that has been done on the environment. We can look at what nutrition requirements systems can you bring in the family or in the farming systems. The nutritional, it can only be addressed by making sure you grow what you need, not in a monoculture way. You can grow vegetables, fruits, indigenous fruits, herbs, medicinal plants, you can keep livestock, you can keep chickens, you can keep goats, you can keep bees, geese, you can grow mushrooms. The diversity the species are, the better the nutrition you receive. So all those approaches, it's about caring of the people. And when you have this diversity of food and nutritional needs is addressed, there is no sickness, there is no ill health within your life. And when you have this, you also have a position to demonstrate maturity, because you will think positive and you'll be able to share with other people through keeping seeds, through growing species, plants, and share with nature and people. You'll be in a position to look at how can you educate other people through seed fairs, through agricultural shows. You develop that as a community or as a society to make sure that the knowledge you have is going beyond your own community. And also having this set in a community or in a country, it will influence policy. And this policy, it will only be applicable when we have enough demonstration or enough herb that can give us the right food, the right needs of things that we need. In Africa, I was saying to friends that in Africa, we may not need these modern malls. We'll need food hubs in every community. What it all means is that if the communities are able to grow their own food, they can create local market system where the food is centralized in there, and those who need particular food can buy or can share or can exchange within their own community. The malls that we have, the modern developmental malls that we have, they are only sucking money out of the communal people, and they are not investing back into their community. And the owners of these malls, they are not even residents of a particular community. So they are pumping out money and they go invest overseas or somewhere far, and the communities, they become poorer and poorer and poorer. So if we start thinking on how we consume anything, food, or any other resources that we need in a community, we focus on the resources to be coming from local, rather than the mushroom you eat, it's coming from Brazil. The asparagus we have, it's coming from maybe from Japan, or the rice you eat is coming from Thailand. Why? What is the impact of this food coming from overseas, coming into our community? The impact on the environment, the impact also on the knowledge, the impact of losing indigenous knowledge and identity. Because when you consume food from other countries or other areas, you are losing your own identity, because you are not promoting your own indigenous food or your local food. So for me, I see that if you want to change the way we consume, the way we eat our food, we need to start looking at a local level, producing enough at local level, share within local level, avoid the big malls to come in an area, and try to promote our own indigenous food within our own community. And that can create a good or a sustainability within our community and within our country. Without the community, without approaching that, we will find that there is no sustainability, and there is going to be a waste of resources, a waste of food that comes in our community. So we need to look at ways of bringing our indigenous knowledge back home, produce our own food locally, distribute our own food locally. And if we have to support the urban areas, it has to be coming from the peripheries or peri-urban areas, feeding our urban areas. So this approach we are talking about, it's something that needs to be influenced or lobbied to the government so that they include it in the policies. And we should apply the citizens of South Africa or Southern African communities. So when you do not have this approach properly, that's where you and pollution. But in our approach, we say there is alternative. We can use the 7 R's that are below there. The 7 R's, it looks at how can we manage this waste. But we cannot manage appropriately. We cannot manage other waste that comes from other countries. It is difficult to manage them because we don't know how to incorporate them in our farming system. We don't know how to incorporate them in our environment. So we are trying to say here, let's look at locally, produce locally, and distribute equally, or address the injustice within our community and the injustice within policymakers, and bring it closer into a community to create a sustainable movement or create a sustainable way of living. So basically, I'm saying this is the way that I think we should look at. And in the future presentation, we'll look into detail on how can we address, how can we apply this system practically? How can we make sure that the process itself is addressed at local level, at regional level, at community level, different levels, as long this system is driven by the local communities. So basically, for my introduction to the next webinars, I think this will be just basic introduction, and I'll go deeper into practicalities of how we can consume sustainably, how we can avoid waste, and how we can create circular economy in our communities, and how we can we create sustainability in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introductory presentation from John. And as was noted, or maybe things that I noted, which will be very key as we go into the future in terms of what we will be doing, would involve looking at maybe the ethics of farming itself, where we are looking at the quality of life, where we are also looking at our impact on the earth, and also when we are looking at the impact that would have on our local economies. I think I noted the issue around the partnership of gardening, which will also be encouraging in our different countries or in our different communities, as well as the issue of the circular economy, which we would also want to promote, as it would actually mean in our communities we're going to be having a smaller footprint on our environment when our economy is circular and it is within our different economies. Thank you very much for that. We would want to quickly go on to, hello?
Yes, Gabriel, we can hear you.
Hello.
We can still hear you. We can still hear you, Gabriel.
Yes, I wanted to say we would want to move on to our Mentimeter where we are going to be answering the question, how do you plan to use the training that you are going to receive in the sustainable consumption workshops? How do we intend to use the training that we are going to be getting from the sustainable production workshops? And I would ask my colleagues in the comms to actually set up that, but as they are setting that up, I would also want to actually have people who have any questions to ask. This is maybe our opportunity to have a discussion in terms of the introduction that we've got today from John. If we have any questions or if we have any issues that surround the preparation that we may need to have as far as the issue of sustainable consumption is concerned. If we have any questions, then we can raise our hands and we can share and we can actually have answers that will be coming in.
The Mentimeter has been shared on the chat box. If everyone can please click on the link and respond to the question. So if you can just click on the Menti and then respond to the question, we will share the results on the call with everyone. Wayne has shared the link. I will also reshare it for everyone. We will be sharing the results with everyone to the Menti. And to those that are just joining us, we are doing a Menti exercise. And the question in the Menti is, how do you plan to use the training you will receive from this workshop series? If you're struggling with the Menti, please respond onto the chat box.
Thanks, Namisa. I'm just waiting to be co-host and I'll be able to share my screen. Thank you.
I think you can share your screen now.
Great. Give me 1 second.
For those that are struggling with the Menti, the question is, how do you plan to use the training you will receive from this workshop series? You're welcome to respond onto the chat box.
Oh, seems a lot of technical issues today. Apologies, colleagues. I'm just getting it back up. 1 second, Gabriel.
Thank you.
Righto, here it comes. There you go, Gabriel.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, everyone. I see that people have actually put in lots of words that we have there, but what is coming in centrally is introducing this to others, raising awareness, training others, transformation of communities, education, sharing, and I also see the element of implementation to say we are going to be doing this and learn with my community. I also look at the issues where people have raised that I will need to share with my community and training others, making it a practice. But centrally, I think the element of sharing is coming up, the element of teaching, the element of having a practical garden, also the capacity enhancement, and I'm seeing in a lot around the change in practice. Practice is also coming up in the issue of networking with others. So all in all, I think something has actually begun to happen within us in terms of the change and in terms of the issues that have been raised or the platform that has been set, but issues of awareness raising and training others, sharing is actually coming up. And this is exactly maybe what we also got from John, that we need to have a sharing community. We need to work with others, and we also need to introduce it to our peers, meaning it should not only end or start and end with you, but it should actually be one that we may even share during our different times of worship with others, and encouraging them as well to be part and parcel of the agroecological movement, which we are encouraging not only within our faith communities, but even in our world communities and in our countries. And further on, as we mentioned earlier on, we should also be looking at even educating our policymakers so that we can also have a transformation that is holistic within our different communities. So in all, we are all in agreement that we would want to have an awareness and a promotion of the agroecological practice, which was mentioned, that we can actually call it, some call it permaculture, agroecology, and regenerative agriculture, which we will be practicing and which would want to have examples in our different communities. Thank you very much. If we do have any further questions that we may want to raise, may we please indicate by raising our hands so that we can actually have a discussion around the concepts that have been introduced today and how we can actually start to get this moving. And as I mentioned earlier on, that we would want to call upon those that would want to practice to have your land ready so that each time we have a session, we can actually start the different processes that would lead to us having sustainable gardens within our homes and sustainable farms also within our different communities. We may have questions and answers so that we may have responses coming in. Anyone with a question, may you please either raise your hand or put it in the chat box for us to discuss in the next 10 minutes.
Some input, Gabriel, on the Menti on the chat box. So would advise anyone and everyone to go check it as a responses that received from the Mentimeter on the chat box.
Okay. Thank you, Nisa. I see Celestine, your hand is up. May you please go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you so much, Gabriel. and so wonderful to be here with everybody today. So many things have come up for me with regards to what we have been discussing. I'm looking forward to the 6 weeks of workshops that we will have. Something that you mentioned as well now, I love the idea of have your land ready. Of course, we did mention that access to land is one of the challenges that we do actually have within our communities. Here in South Africa, in Cape Town, where I stay, you will see that a lot of people have been displaced from their land, or a lot of people are living quite closely together. So I would love for us to also discuss how do we do sustainable container farming, or when you say prepare your land, and maybe for our people that are living in flats where there's a lot of concrete, so they can't actually just dig and start planting. So I hope that our workshop will also get into perhaps how to do raised beds and what are the best kinds of crops that you can be planting if you have very limited access to space and land. And sometimes the way the communities have been planned out, because I know that John was also referring to, you know, the way government actually does their planning. Something that they found particularly in the cities is that the health department is actually needing to give the children vitamin K injections because the buildings are so high that there's no sun. So I know I've thrown quite a few issues out there, but that is some of the issues that we have here in the communities in Cape Town, that the people say, but there is no soil where we stay. There's not really sun where we stay either. And what are the options that we can give to our communities in terms of actually generating soil, and what kind of utilization of the space that they do have? Thanks.
Gabriel, you are on mute.
Gabriel, you are mute.
Sorry about that. And I was just checking, is John on the call? You can actually go ahead and respond to the question.
Unfortunately, John is not on the call, Gabriel. You may respond to the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start responding to the call. The issue of this urban setup, for all agriculture to take place, we need the soil, as you have mentioned, Celestine. So in the next series, John is actually going to be dealing with the issue of how we can actually have a healthy soil where plants and crops can actually grow or be grown in the different settings. And in the urban setup, I know most of the places may not have the ideal soils, but we can actually learn to actually have the soil that we want to have our crops growing on. Even when we are in urban areas, we can actually use the old tires to set up a small piece of land where we would actually have what we call pinwall gardening. We would also be able to set up containers which are friendly to the development of good soils, and also which may not harm plants if they are grown in those particular containers. And all this, we are going to be having that as the first part, no, as the second part, after maybe creating this environment where we are talking about how to go about it and the different systems that we can use. In our next part of the workshop series, soil is the one which comes up next. You also mentioned that some people live in high-rise buildings. For those high-rise buildings that might have access to the sun, whenever the sun is available, yes, we are able to grow crops there, but it will then vary on what crops we can actually be able to grow or what vegetables we may be able to grow, depending on the space that we have, as well as the access to sunlight for that particular area. Unfortunately, Celestine, where there is no sun at all, it is very difficult for most plants to grow, because the alternative will also not be very friendly to the environment, because you may then need to use light or artificial lighting, which requires lots of energy for you to be able to grow some of those crops, which also require lots of energy from the sun for them to be able to grow. So we would want to explore whether we will be having any form of energy that might be given to these particular plants for them to be able to also grow very well when there is no sun at all. Maybe this would be my quick answer, but we would also give those questions to John. Then he can also add on to the answers, and we'll be able to send this to you as well. I've taken note that we'll be able to send the questions to John for him to be able to give further response to what I have given to you. Thank you very much. I see, I hear your hand is up. May you please ask your question.
Yes, I have something to ask, like a question. Hello.
Hello, yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
So I have two questions, and question number one is that due to industrial farming, we have been seeing many cases of soil erosion and lack of or poor land in fertility because of use of these inorganic fertilizers and these other industrial organics that are being used to make sure that soil must be in good quality. So when we look at the effects of industrial farming and what we have been witnessing right away, we found that whenever land has been used for industrial farming activities, it lost its quality in its soil fertility processes. So I would like to ask, how can someone first deal with this issue? Because we need to have a fertile soil to make sure that we can move with organic farming and agroecology. My second question is that due to how Mr. John has been working on this project of agroecology and organic farming, there have been some impacts. So would he provide us with the statistics on environmental and social impacts as one who has been working on agroecology and organic farming projects? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahia. On your first question, in terms of how we can actually restore this soil that has been damaged through industrial agriculture, there are many ways that can be used to restore the soil, but it will actually be an exercise that takes some bit of time. First of all, we can actually start to grow naturally plants or crops that are natural fixers of nitrogen into the soil. Starting off with, we can actually grow crops like sugar beans, which may actually bring in the natural nitrogen into the soil, which does not require chemicals. Because when we are using industrial agriculture, most of the time, the land has to be cleared fully. And also chemicals are used to actually clear off the land, as well as some of the chemicals that are used to clear the weeds. So in this case, we would want to grow crops that will be able to take out the chemicals, as well as to infuse into the soil natural, inputs which are required in the soil, and to sort of bring a balance to this particular soil that would have been using up only one set of nutrients from the ground through monoculture. So we need to start sort of a crop rotation type of agriculture, and also having multi-crops grown on the same piece of land, so that some of them, as they are taking out certain nutrients, they are also injecting into the soil some other nutrients. This will bring about a balance of the soil nutrients, which would have been damaged through the extraction of the same kind of nutrients over a long period of time. And also, when we are using industrial agriculture, because of the high use of chemicals, you'd find that there is very little life that is there. And as John will be presenting on the soils, he will be able to share with you further how the soil structure itself would need to be suitable for the growing of crops. And this can only be done through the growing of crops, as he demonstrated in one of the pictures that was on the presentation, where you have multi-cropping taking place. That is also very important. On the issues of the statistics, this one I'll pass to John on the statistics on the impact of industrial agriculture. But I just noted at the beginning of when I was making my opening remarks that at the moment, industrial agriculture actually helps in contributing about 47% of the greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere, which are responsible for global warming. And that is one thing that we would actually need to look at. We will do the actual breakdown in terms of what aspect of industrial agriculture contributes how much in terms of that particular 47%. And we'll be sharing that with you as well. Thank you very much, Aya. I saw another hand. Okay, yes, I still have a hand from Ayodeji, all the way from Nigeria. Welcome, Ayodeji, and may you please ask your question. Hello, Ayodeji, are you still on the call? Can you please go ahead and ask your question?
I have two questions to ask. How do we differentiate? Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you now, Ayodeji. Please go ahead.
All right. My first question is, how do we differentiate between traditional farming system and agroecological farming systems? Because I believe that we should be able to differentiate between these two so that we will not be mixing it up. I know that some of the features might be similar, but one of the reasons why it's important for us to differentiate is so that we will not appear to still be doing farming the old way, the crude way of using cutlass and hoe, and while there could be better ways. I mean, there could be more convenient ways of doing farming while it will still be done the agroecological way. That's my first question. My second question is, how can SAFCEI enhance or promote research funding for agroecological farming system? I know that just like you have said that industrial agriculture contributes about 47% of the greenhouse gases we have globally. And I also want to believe that out of this 47% contribution of greenhouse gases from industrial agriculture, we are likely to have the majority of the contribution coming from, what's it called now? Crop protection, pest control, because that has to do with a lot of the use of agrochemicals. That's one of the areas wherein we use agrochemicals more. So there is need for research funding to be able to provide us with better alternatives, more convenient alternatives for controlling pests. And also, let me quickly add that although we know that we need good soil to produce our crop, but if we produce our crop with good soil, if we are not careful, our natural competitors, which are the pests, they will compete with us and they might end up outsmarting us and making away with the produce. And that's why we need to come up with better alternatives for what's it called now? For pest control. I have made some efforts at getting funding because I'm involved in research in that line, for getting funding for research in that line, but I've not been able to get so much. Until recently, I got to know of an organization in Sweden that basically funds research in organic agriculture. I put up a proposal with them. I'm expecting a response. But what I'm trying to say is that we don't have so much of organizations that are funding research in that line. Like if we have come up with a letter to Bill and Melinda Gates to stop funding industrial agriculture in Africa, we are not asking them to stop funding agriculture in Africa. It is industrial agriculture. So we should also be able to make a request. Instead of funding industrial agriculture in Africa, provide us fund to fund agriculture or research in agriculture for this particular field. So I believe it's one of the areas that SAFCEI need to look into. So please, can you respond to this? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deji. I would try to quickly answer your questions as follows. I'll start off from your last contribution in terms of the issue of pest control. In the series that we are having now, one of the topics that we are going to be dealing with is the management of pests, and we are going to be sharing with you the natural ways of managing pests in terms of agroecological practices. Secondly, in terms of funding, I think this is an issue that we are also going to be taking up in terms of funding of further research into what methods can be used in terms of farming practices and the control of pests. In the promotion of research on agroecological issues, as SAFCEI, we are already undertaking some of the researches that would also in a way contribute to the issues of agroecological production. And coming into your last question, to your first question, which I'm answering last, which is what is the difference between agroecological practices as well as traditional practices? I think agroecological practices incorporate the best practices that support the environment. In that, under the traditional practices, there were some elements which were also not very good in terms of a constant movement, say for instance, constant moving from one area to the other and cutting down of trees. But even within that, they also had the sense to actually maintain some of the trees, especially fruit-bearing trees, as well as some of the trees that were used for traditional ceremonies were also not cut. So those are some of the issues that have been translated into agroecological practices. But with agroecological practices, it's mainly now the fact that people are growing crops on the same area and we are also bringing on board some of the science practices that have been looked and noted that they are also in support of environmentally friendly practices. So agroecology incorporates traditional as well as scientific practices, whilst the traditional growing of crops actually just the experience which was passed on from one generation to the other, but did not have maybe the addition of the scientific approach, which I think we are also going to be making very wide use of without destroying the environment. I think as we go through with the series, some of these questions will also be answered. Thank you very much, Ayodeji. And now, because of the time that we have left, I would like to thank you all for asking these questions, and I would like to invite at this moment in time Wayne to share with us the vision that Safsi has in terms of supporting the process of agroecology, so that together as faith leaders and our different communities will be making our contribution in the agroecological practices. Wayne, may you please come in? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel, and good afternoon, good morning, rather, colleagues and friends. Thank you for this wonderful session, Gabriel. I really enjoyed listening to John. I just want to acknowledge there are a few questions in the chat box that we haven't really gotten to now, but I know Gabriel will note them and he'll give them to John directly, and then we'll also hopefully have a bit of time in the next session, excuse me, that John will be able to address some of these questions that was posted in the chat box. It's always wonderful when you have more questions than you have time available to answer the questions. So thank you for that, friends and colleagues. Just in terms of, and Gabriel has asked me just to look at some of the next steps and SAFCEI's support in taking action for agroecological work that this workshop series is based on. And I just want to remind us all again that SAFCEI's purpose and its role is to work with faith leaders who then in turn are able to work with their communities to support them in earth keeping and earth care initiatives that they're going to do. And obviously one of the earth care initiatives that we feel is very important is agroecology. So the support of faith leaders is key for their action. Obviously, I would not be able to say what that action would look like because every community is different. There was a comment a little bit earlier in the chat around, I think it was Sheikh Amini, if I'm not mistaken, saying that Malawi has just entered their wet season, and they would like to investigate some further support for that. So there are different ways of doing support, and I can't be naming them all right now because there are many ones and applicable to every different location. But SAFCEI is very interested in working alongside faith leaders who then obviously will bring their communities on board to implement agroecological practices. So I just want to say thank you again for that part, for bringing it to us and really starting the journey, Gabriel and colleagues, that the faith leaders on this call can go on in the next 6 weeks or so with yourself and John into what the practical responses actually would be. SAFCEI does have things like the small grants facility, which others on this call would have known about. And actually some on this call would have actually been the recipients of that small grants opportunity already. We need to obviously be aware that SAFCEI is a regional entity, and we don't have an unlimited amount of funds. So what we would like to do is support different faith leaders around the region and make sure that they are able to access some of the small grants if that is what they need to perform the agroecological practices. But I just want to say again, colleagues, thank you very much for this workshop. I'm looking forward to the next part of the session because I know we're going to delve a lot deeper into the real practices. Gabriel mentioned some of them, into using things that can be recycled and using them to grow plants. If you have a small space, what does that mean? There was a question in the chat box about manure and about fertilizers and how do we work with those things. And I know that John is so experienced, and he's going to go very deep into that with us. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I just want to say once again, thank you, everybody. And back to you, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Wayne, for elaborating on the areas where we can support. And as we go through the 6 weeks, I think by the time we are finished, as people from Malawi have already indicated that the wet season has begun, we would want to take advantage of this particular period when we have the most favorable conditions for crop growth to actually begin our journey into sustainability, and that all of us on the call would make our different contributions. For those that may not have maybe a place to grow their crops, we can still go ahead and support the process through advocacy. Let's talk to our policy makers and advise them on the alternatives that are there in place to support sustainable agriculture, and to ask them or to request them to actually make policies that would enable people to grow crops in a sustainable way. I would like to thank all of you for being on the call, and just to have a few issues that are technical, I will just highlight some, and my colleagues would also add on to this in terms of our responses when we actually get the invite. May I urge all of you to please respond to our invites through the online registration. I know that at times people might actually say, I have responded to the call or to the invite through an email, but may you please fill out the forms that are online. That way it will be easy for the collation of data so that we can get our data on time, and that we can also be able to know who is actually responding, because when you are responding online, there are questions that you're supposed to be responding to, which are important for the registration process. So please, each time an invite is sent out to you, may you please try to respond to the online forms and fill them out so that you are electronically captured. Because at times when you write an email, would then need to have a long line. Maybe you write to me, I'll have to send it to communications, and that takes a lot of time and effort as well. So please do respond online as well in the future. Thank you very much, everyone. Maybe just an addition from the comms department in terms of how best we can respond so that we are able to help you much better. Chloe or Numisa?
On my side, Gabriel, just to note that when people register, registration is closed now, unfortunately, but for future, when you register, Zoom will send you a link to your email with the joining link. You will receive the link the day you register. Please make sure you store that email so that it's on top of your emails, because we open the registrations maybe a week or two before the actual event. So the link can be lost in your emails. Just make sure you store the email, or you highlight it, make it accessible to you on the day of the meeting. That's all for me. But the registration for this workshop is closed, Gabriel.
Thank you very much. Chloe, do you have anything else to add?
Hi, Gabriel. Good morning to everyone, or yes, good afternoon. I think on my side, the only thing is I have noted some people did register after the closing date. They can still join. However, on our side, we would not be able to process the data requests, any new data requests, if they've registered after the 13th of September midday, which was last week, Monday.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe. And I would like to thank everyone for attending this first part of our workshop series. Please, may we continue to be available for the next series, which will be continuing on Monday next week up until the 25th of October. where we would have graduates in agroecology, and all of us will begin to seriously contribute towards the reduction to climate change. As we close, may I ask Celestine to give us a closing prayer, please, and thereafter, Celestine.
Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to come together today. And, you know, when we come together, this is just to remind us about the power of coming together as community, that there is a spirit of life within each and every one